did you know if Arnie lives to the ripe young age of 85, his heart will beat over 3 billion times? That's pretty amazing, isn't it? The National Geographic magazine said that the heart pumps 2,000 gallons of blood through 60,000 miles of blood vessels in our body every day. That's over 2 times around the world. And it does it without us even thinking about it. And though we go about our day not thinking about our beating heart, there are some important numbers that we should pay attention to for our heart's protection. And that's what I'd like to tell you about today. Now, I've drawn my preschool version of the human heart. As you can see, it's not as scintillating as our real heart. But I did it to show 4 chambers of the heart, because I'm giving you 4 numbers, and I'm thinking that might help you remember them. Does anybody know what the chambers of the heart are?
Ventricle.
A ventricle, in there we have 2 ventricles at the bottom, 2 atriums at the top, right and left. So 4 measurements you need to know. The first is resting heart rate. The second is waist to hip ratio. The third is blood pressure. And the fourth is a cholesterol screening. And that actually requires a blood test. But the other measurements you can do at home. So let's start with the first one, resting heart rate. Now you can do this at home by laying in bed. When you wake up in the morning, just relax a little bit, take your 2 fingers and find your pulse either at your wrist or your neck and count it for 60 seconds. And I recommend doing it at least 3 or 5 times in the week and getting the average number. And that will be a very good indicator of what your resting heart rate is. And of course you can use your Apple Watch or Fitbit too, but I like the old-fashioned way. And for your resting heart rate, you want it to be between 60 to 80 beats per minute. Number 2, the waist to hip ratio. And just so you know, I did it in the order of how our blood flows through the heart, if anyone didn't catch that. So for waist to hip ratio, I think this is more important than what our weight is or even our body mass index, because if we have a waist size more than 35 inches, it can lead to not only diabetes, but increased heart disease. So what you need to do is get a tape measure and measure it around your waist, so at the low part of your ribs, your lowest rib, and then measure it at your hips, and you want to do the widest part laterally. And you take your waist measurement, divide it by your hip measurement, and that will give you your ratio. So for women, they need to have 0.85 or less. And the guys, get off again, ladies, 9.95 or less. And for women, the waist measurement should be 32.5 inches. But definitely try to go less than 35. The third measurement is taking your blood pressure. And you can do this at the local grocery store, at the pharmacy section, or at your healthcare providers. But I do recommend getting a blood pressure monitor and doing it at home, especially if you have a family history of hypertension. Hypertension or high blood pressure can lead to hypertension, and this definitely is silent if you don't know about it, and over the long run, it can cause a heart attack or a stroke. And it's kind of like if you're driving down a highway. Let's say your blood vessels are the highway, and blood is flowing freely. It's like taking a lane away from the road because you're narrowing your blood vessels. And what does this cause? Congestion. We all know how traffic can raise our blood pressure, right? So blood pressure recommendation is 120/80. The last measurement is taking a blood test for a cholesterol screening, as well as some other factors that can cause inflammation or more congestion. And that is your total cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol, your HDL cholesterol, your triglycerides, homocysteine, and C-reactive protein levels. They also cause this sticky traffic congestion. So you need to go to your healthcare provider at least once a year, get that screening, and find out how many times they'd like you to do that. So how many chambers of the heart? 4. How many measurements do we need to know? 4. I have made some origami hearts that actually have the ideal measurements for you. And from my heart to yours, here's living long, happy, healthy, young years.
Thank you. And welcome Toastmasters and guests, and especially Annette. The purpose of her speech, and this is another one from one of the treasured old manuals that are going to be washed out in 2020, so I better get up to speed, is the speech to inform. And the purpose of that speech is to give a well-organized, supported with facts and research and quotes, speech on a topic that is relevant to the audience and understandable and interesting. Her opening was fabulous because she brought it home to all of us in very simple language. If we live till 85, our heart will have beat 3 billion times. And then she even made a clearer example of that, about how many times that would be if you went around the world. So that was fabulous. When I evaluate somebody, I have goods and could be betters. And so the goods were the opening. The organization of the speech was quite good. She told us what she was going to tell us. At the end, I'm not sure she did summarize what she told us in the speech, so the organization was great. As far as audio visuals, they mentioned that she should support her research with audio visuals or notes. Her audio visuals were this chart, which she put on the wall, and it was difficult for me to see it because there was a couple heads in the way. So putting that closer to the middle or the center might have been a good idea. But the way she organized the chart to match the ventricles of the heart was stellar, scintillating example, even though the numbers on the chart in one part, like all of these numbers for the top were a little hard to absorb. But then she gave us a handout which had the information we needed to take home in red. Excellent use of audio visuals. And then the little origami, how did she have time to do that? Make a little heartbeat for us. We can go home and explain this to our neighbors and friends too. I also thought it was great when she talked about the measurement between the heart and the hip. And the hip rate for women was supposed to be 32.5 inches. I wanted to grab a tape measure and see it myself, because I don't think mine is that anymore in the weight that I've lost with my age. As far as the explanation of the total cholesterol and triglycerides at the end, that moved a bit fast. But overall, as far as giving a well-balanced, interesting, relevant presentation using facts and backing it up with quotes, it was excellent. So congratulations, Annette.